how to keep your frequency high. How do you do it? It's one of the most frequently asked questions that I get. One of them. And as with many of these sort of like how-to questions, some have a very formulaic response and some are more dynamic, more based off of you as an individual, intuitive. You have to feel your way into it. You have to put it to practice. You have to figure out what works for you, what does not work for you. I can give some general guidelines, but make it exciting for you. Apply it in a way that works for you. First of all, number one, how to keep your frequency high, is to stay as connected as you can to your true self, to your true devotion, to your true connection, what is most important to you. For some that may be symbolized by the one, infinity. For some that may be symbolized by consciousness. For some that may be represented by what feels true for me in this moment, my resonance. For some people it may be what seems true for them, like almost on a bodily level, like what feels true. For some people it's an idea or it's a frequency. For example, love. I want to stay true to love. So have something that you would call the highest. Whatever for you is represented by the highest. The highest. I found this to be one of the most effective ways to always keep a straight back throughout intense, super subtle, dynamic circumstances, is to never sacrifice upon that which is most important to you, which is your connection to the divine, however you want to call that divine or that divinity. The divinity within, which is also the divinity without, because there's no separation. So to have that true connection to what is the truest to you. So it can be a thought, it can be an image, it can be a word, but use your imagination to tune into that which is most important to you and let that run your life, in a sense, especially when shit hits the fan. To maintain a high state of frequency, empowerment, in other words, or clarity. Clarity as to who you are, what you belong to. Sometimes I say you belong to infinity, not to the human mind. Do not get needy and greedy whenever you can. Do not get too needy and greedy. Do not become a beggar, because you are a creator. You are part of infinity. You belong to infinite abundance, to infinite endlessness, to infinite endless eternal consciousness. So to remember something along those lines, something truly transcendent to all the things that you see going on an everyday basis. Does everyone have something along those lines that represents this connection to them? That's good. So was there anyone that does not have that connection or does not know what I'm talking about when I say your true devotion, your highest aspiration, your highest connection? Okay, good. So when all else fails, this will save your butt. When you've tried every other technique, when you've tried every other method, when you've tried to raise your frequency and have amazing thoughts about yourself and about the universe, and these can definitely work. They can shoot you right through the roof. But when all else fails, resort back to you and you. Let go of everyone else. Let go of all the circumstances. Go back to your source. Baseline, most important. Well, most important. Most relevant when nothing else seems to work. The next, I wouldn't say stage down, but let's say when shit hits the fan, but you are still able to manage your frequency. So it's not completely desperate yet. Maybe a little desperate, but it's not absolutely despondent. It's not yet Arjuna style. Take your consciousness, take your mind, take your thoughts, if you will, take your imagination to a focus that represents true connection to you. It sounds kind of similar, and in a way it is, but this can be more context related. This can be more in honor of your dreams, shall I say. So things that you desire, a state of being that you desire, a version of yourself as an individuated expression of the all that is consciousness that you wish to express yourself most as. Those type of core frequencies that mean the most to you, that are slightly more contextual and personal and relative in nature. Take your consciousness to these ideas and avoid thinking too much, if at all, about anything that gives you a sense of struggle and resistance. Some call this spiritual bypassing. What happens when you do this is you ease into who you are. Why do you feel good when you take your consciousness to certain types of points of view? So point of view can apply to any kind of circumstance. Any circumstance has infinite points of view at its disposal, and which one you pick is up to you. Everything is inherently neutral and meaningless. Words don't mean anything, circumstances don't mean anything, whatever people say to you doesn't mean anything, whatever people do to you doesn't mean anything. Nothing means anything. Does that sound fun? Maybe not, maybe so. It's the truth. Deal with it. If you know that everything is neutral and meaningless, and that everything is completely subjective and you generate your own state of being only, no one else is responsible for your state of being, no one else is responsible for the way you see life, no one is responsible for the way that you feel. You and you alone. May sound intense and heavy, but it's really just a very liberating truth when you embrace this, when you own this. Okay, because if you don't own it, you can't change it. So if you don't want to change it, that's fine. You can play victim to yourself. But if you wish to change it, transform it, ascend, progress, you need to own it. Whatever you don't believe is yours, you can't affect. If you say, well, it's up to them that I feel this way, well, then it is up to them that you feel that way. So you can't suddenly change how you feel unless they change how they respond to you. Does that make sense? Just a very basic example, but happens all the time in everyday life. We automatically project meaning into things, and we forget that this is smoke and mirrors. A game, a dynamic play of energy inside of consciousness that reflects how we play internally with our own beliefs, our own perspectives, our own observations, our own definitions, our own interpretations, our own responses, our own desires, our own beliefs, etc. So everything is neutral and meaningless, except for you. Well, in a sense, you are too. But you have the power to give meaning. And this may sound a little silly or stupid even. If there's no meaning inherent in things, then why would you start giving meaning to things? People sometimes ask me that question. It's a bit of a subtle point. So, especially in the more old school, traditional spiritual circles of Buddhism, Hinduism, Advaita, it's often idolized to not define things. And it's a very helpful practice. So if you see that everything is neutral and meaningless, why not just keep quiet? Right? Keep quiet, be still, and know that there is no meaning. Know that there is only God, something along those lines. That's beautiful to know that there's only God, definitely. And because everything is neutral and meaningless, there's always going to be a subjective game that's running, that's at play. Even the subjective definition of there is no definition is a definition. It colors your experience. Even when you say, oh, this is neutral and meaningless, you either feel good about it, you feel bad about it, depending on how you color the very neutral statement that everything is neutral and meaningless. It's a very neutral statement. It's very empty, meaningless, and neutral to say that everything is empty, meaningless, and neutral. So how that makes you feel, again, depends on your definition of it. And on and on and on it goes. So you can never escape the fact that you shape your own experience. Does that make sense? I know it's hard to understand sometimes. It's hard to see immediately that you are the creator of your feeling state. I know it's hard sometimes. However, it's the truth. So deal with it. Or don't. But then you must be enjoying what you're doing at present. So, when you, and I've shared this many times, but I'll share it again because it's such a crucial understanding. Since everything is neutral and meaningless, and it's up to you to define what something means, it is therefore up to you how you feel about something. Now, what makes for a good feeling, an amazing feeling, an expensive feeling, and what makes for a bad, negative, or contractive feeling? Anyone, just in one sentence? What?
Belief systems.
Belief systems, but yes, definitely, but what exactly makes it that a belief feels either great or bad? Anyone in one sentence?
In alignment with your higher self.
Thank you. So we feel amazing as soon as our subjective interpretation of what is always going to be neutral and meaningless is in alignment with the way consciousness sees things. And by consciousness, this can be called higher self. You can even go as far as to say source or the one. Doesn't really matter. Or creation or the fundamental principles of existence. But when your subjective interpretation of what is essentially neutral and meaningless is in vibrational alignment with the deeper essence of your consciousness, of creation therefore, of existence, because there's no difference between your consciousness and creation and existence and God and Source. When your perspective is in a vibrational understanding that aligns itself with the vibrational understanding of your way more expanded, seeing many parallel realities at the same time type of self or level of consciousness. When those two line up, or let's just say when your personal vibration lines up with your higher self's vibration or Source's vibration or God's vibration, if you will, you feel great. That's literally all that it means. Not that that's insignificant, I'm just saying that's all that there is to it. There is no other reason for you to ever feel good. You can't feel good about a single thing unless your perspective of that single thing is in alignment with the way higher consciousness would view that thing. Simple, right? Does everyone get that? Yep. Okay, cool, thank you. Why do you feel bad? You feel bad precisely because of the opposite reason. What you're believing about a circumstance is being signaled to you to be out of alignment with the truth of creation. That's why you feel bad. Feeling bad is a good signal. It means your compass is working. So again, like I said last week, next time you feel bad, you go, oh jolly. This is great, thank you. I feel bad. That means something positive is occurring. What does it mean? My guidance compass is intact, it's working, and my higher self is loving me because it's actually, as expanded as it is, it cares enough about my existence to actually come down and knock on my door in the form of a bad feeling and let me know that my perspective is out of alignment with its more expanded perspective. It's patiently waiting for you to grow up, to gain perspective. That's what bad feelings are. What do? Bad feeling. Oh my God, this means something negative. Defining a neutral feeling, such as a bad feeling, which is a neutral thing, as a bad thing makes us feel even worse because it puts us even further out of alignment with how higher self sees it. And so higher self comes down again, knocks on our door triple times, and says, hey, you're defining the neutral emotion that already made you feel negative because your perspective of the initial thing was out of alignment, but now you're defining this as also being bad, as also being wrong, as also meaning lack, as also meaning lack of progress, lack of abundance, lack of connection. While it is in fact the opposite, it's a sign of abundance, it's a sign that your compass is working, it's a sign that I love you, it's not a sign that you're not loved, it's a sign that you are loved. A bad feeling means you're loved. What do? You define it as a negative thing, and on and on and on it goes. And so you create this downward negative spiral, which leads to pessimism, cynicism, depression, etc. Make sense? Yeah. Good. Alternatively, you can start to pay attention. So you pay attention to how you feel. Sounds silly, especially again from the angle, not to hammer too much on that, but I know certain people do come from that background, some of my viewers online as well. So I'll just address it real quick again. From the more classical, old school circles of spirituality, which are based in systems and beings that have realized things thousands of years ago, which are no longer relevant today. Well, some of it is, but some of it isn't. That type of spirituality will have you believe that feelings don't really mean anything. And, well, they're true. They're saying the same thing I said. Feelings don't mean anything. However, they do mean that they're signaling you. So they don't inherently mean anything, but what they do mean is that you're in communication with your true self. So when you pay attention to how you feel, you're quite literally answering the phone. If you don't care about how you feel, you quite literally just hear it ringing. And then at some point, it keeps ringing. It's not like a regular phone because higher self actually loves you unconditionally. So it waits patiently from its timeless point of view. So if you don't pick up the phone, it will keep ringing. So what do people do? Then they start avoiding, then they start bypassing in that sense. Then they start running away from the call. The call is feeling bad. Now, nobody wants to feel bad. That's why the system works so well. Because it lets you know that this is not right, right? So now we have to gain the maturity, we have to gain the wisdom, we have to gain the appreciation, the alignment, the minimal degree of alignment to redefine feeling bad in a good way. If you can do this, you can keep your frequency high most any other time. So this would be a third suggestion. The first being, find your connection to whatever is the highest. divinity, the one, the absolute, whatever that represents to you. Just you and the one, and that inseparability. Focus on that. When all else fails, this will save your butt. Number 2, focus on something that you enjoy, so that you're getting into the frequency of alignment, so that you're focusing on something or along the line of a sight, of a perspective that your higher self is also seeing. When that lines up, you feel great, you feel amazing, you're actually in connection with a higher frequency domain, and you have access to higher frequency thoughts, perspectives, observations, clarity, speed, accuracy, all that, all the good stuff. Third way would be to start defining feeling bad in a really, really good way. If you feel bad, it means the system is working. Can you define that in a positive way even though you don't like it? It's meant for you not to like it. If you were out of alignment and you liked it, something would be wrong and you would kill yourself within 10 seconds from now. But it doesn't work that way. You're fulfilling your theme by means of communication with your higher self. The only means we have as human beings, there is other means, but for most human beings, the only real tangible way to get in greater touch with who they are is to take guidance from their feeling body without putting too much story on it, without saying, oh, this means that. Because again, be very careful when you give meaning to an emotion, you start to feel a certain way about the emotion. And you actually no longer feel the initial emotion, you feel your present response to that emotion. For example, I can feel, let's say I feel anger in a moment. If my belief is, oh, this means I'm bad, this means I'm not an enlightened spiritual teacher, this means I'm not this, I'm not that, this means whatever. If I have a negative perspective of the initial emotion of anger that comes up, if I define it in a way that my higher self disagrees with, I feel bad. I don't feel the anger anymore. I may still have remnants of it, or I may think I feel it, but what I feel more now is the frustration of being angry, with being angry. And then everyone recognizes that? Where they judge themselves for feeling a certain way. It's more prominent of a problem, so to speak, or issue, than the initial emotion actually is. In fact, the initial emotion is nothing but a telephone call from your higher self. It's a good thing. But then we continue to distort it in a way, because we don't understand how the system works, but now you do. So if on the other hand, I would think that, oh, this anger right now is serving a purpose. Wait a second, I'm feeling this fire rise, and this fire actually signifies that I'm becoming aware of something that's relevant in this moment. Somehow this fire of anger is actually passion for truth. It's actually passion for greater alignment. It's passion to bring about greater truth, clarity, and alignment in myself and in my environment. Therefore, it's passion for my alignment. Suddenly, I see as my higher self sees the emotion of anger. And boom, I start to feel really amazing about feeling angry. Initial emotion canceled out. I feel amazing. That's what I'm left with. So you see, your interpretation of a moment, even of an emotion, is what generates the next emotion. So keep spiraling upwards by keep defining it in a more and more holistically amazing way. And you go like this, boom, 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 boom. And it's what they call acceleration. You start accelerating. You start gaining access to states of consciousness. And that sounds fancy, but it's really just organic. But states of consciousness that have access to so much more than you would ever assume. And you become so much more skillful at being you, at being consciousness, because that's what you are. And it comes with all kinds of benefits, most of all, which is feeling good in alignment and clear on who you are and who you want to be and how you wish to respond to people and to life and to experiences. So you get to root yourself more and more in the frequency of abundance, of bliss, of joy, of expansion through, for example, these 3 methods that I just shared. And there's way more. But in general, you will find that it is a combination of either being highly devotional to the highest, focusing upon something that resonates for you, that is in alignment with your higher self, or changing your interpretation of what occurs to be in alignment with your higher self. Now, if you apply these 3 methods and you play with these on and off in different circumstances, see what works best, not saying, oh, one is better than the other, let me just do this. Just like take it as it comes in each moment and intuitively start to play with either the devotion to the highest, going back to, I accept the fact that this is what I create for myself. I know that this is part of my theme. I know that I can handle it, otherwise it wouldn't occur. I know that this is part of what I'm creating. I and I are one. Forget about everyone else. Forget about everything else. You know that you and you are one, and that there's a true love connection, there's a true appreciation for yourself from your higher self, and vice versa. Build that connection up to a very strong, powerful degree to where neediness starts to fall away in that sense, or not even so much neediness, but just lack in general, fear in general. You start to become really stable and grounded and anchored in, and also sky high at the same time, but really anchored in the truth of your being, in the alignment of what matters. Choose something that resonates and focus on that, or change your perspective of what has already occurred to one that is actually in alignment with abundance, with bliss, with joy, with you did great, not you did bad, with you are loved, not you are unloved, etc. These are just 3 simple techniques, or focal points, to make sure that you have the tools you need to stay in alignment with yourself, no matter what, and to keep your frequency high, to keep it amplified in that way. Now, as a general concept, this is a method, I guess, but is not to take your cue from your circumstances. But again, if you understand that circumstances already don't mean shit, then it's very easy to not take your cue from circumstances, because you simply see that they don't mean anything. Now, if you do believe they mean something, then you better make sure that your meaning given to the circumstance is in alignment with abundance, I'm loved, I can do whatever, etc. And by I can do whatever, I simply mean I am all possible. Not I go kill people, just I am all possible. I am in the all possible. Everything is possible. That's what I mean with I can do anything. Just to feel powerful. To feel on top of the world, on top of your creation. So don't take your cue from circumstances, again, because circumstances take their cue from you. And what happens when something takes its cue from something that takes its cue from something? You create a pattern, you create a loop, you create a timeless zone. You know, in the old Superman movies, where they were, or even the new one, I think, where the 3 bad guys were captured in this timeless thing that was just going about the universe. That's kind of what we do to ourselves. We stop accelerating, we stop moving, we stop growing, we stop understanding more of ourselves. Because we keep basing how we feel off of what appears. And when we base what we feel off of what appears, when what appears bases itself off of what we feel, you're just basing what you feel off of what you previously felt. And if you don't like what you previously felt, but you think your only option is to feel according to what you see, which is a reflection of how you previously felt, we call it depression, downward spiraling, etc. Stagnancy, stagnation. Make sense? It's all very logical, isn't it? Enlightenment is. Empowerment is too. It's very logical. You just need to see it. Once you see it, you start applying it, and will there be challenging times? Yes. But will you be able to navigate through that? Yes. Will you succeed? Absolutely. Will you ascend? Will you expand? Will you transcend? Absolutely. Will you become more of yourself? Absolutely. Will you become less human? Abso-fucking-lutely. Do you want that? Yes. Thank you.